Hello. Hello. I am so excited and very nervous to be here. I chose the wrong outfit not only because it was the photo used in my promo. I've worn this once before in real life, and when I got a tintype, and I was like, I'm going to stunt on these hoes and wear my new favorite outfit. And I guess I look like a cartoon character that has one outfit, but I promise I have more glamour in my closet. But I'm very excited to be here. Wrong mistake to wear this when I do a lot of nervous peeing before talking because it's... Do you need me to talk louder? I don't know if I know how to do that, but I'll bet someone does. Am I on? Yay, thank you so much. Okay, now you get to hear my big gay Kermit voice all the way back there. All right, cool. I don't get out of the house a lot, so I'm just very excited to be in a physical space with people. It's my first time in Bend. As I was driving here, I drove over a real tumbleweed, which was very, very exciting, very cool. In the Midwest, where I'm from, we don't have those. We just have big runaway cheese curds, and those are much more dangerous for your car. But I love a bundle of sticks. I've been called one a couple times in my life, if you will. It's what we call faggot. We've reclaimed the term. If you call me bro, that's when I'll be really upset. So, my name is Kyle Letendre. It rhymes with chicken tender. If you are my former French teacher, it's Kyle Letendre, but it sounds a little douchey. But I'll answer to anything that starts with an L, so long as it's mostly polite. Kyle, Louisiana, totally fine with me. And I am a graphic designer and illustrator, and as mentioned by Kenneth, a big gay thumb about town. And I'm just excited to be here. The people I meet in graphic design make it all worth it. It's such a weird thing, why do any of us decide that drawing letters is what we should do with our time? I don't know, but I'm so glad we did it, and the people that I've met through it are a lot of fun. Cool. So yeah, I am a lettering artist in Portland. I've been there since about 2021, and I love it. It's really great. I'm obsessed with all the fruit trees that are on the sidewalk. That's wild to me. I have a little Google map of all of them, so I can check on them. Generally, my approach with design, as with most of life, is if you've got a check, I've got a talent. So I end up being a bit of a rhinestone Swiss Army knife. I'll do a little bit of anything. If you need somebody for your bar and bat mitzvah, or somebody to play Scrabble with your aunt, holler at your girl. I am a type designer, although kind of reluctantly. I am a huge fan of typography, but I get very nervous doing it. So I have once or twice completed a font. Look at me go, Mom. Most of my stuff relates to lettering, which I love a lot. If you had told a younger me that you could make a livelihood drawing letters, I would have never believed you, and yet I'm so grateful that it's a thing. Oftentimes, the focus is on branding, which is a lot of fun. The bottom one was somebody who contacted me and has a yacht. I do not have yacht money, but somebody who hired me does, so just by saying that, I'm in a new tax bracket. Very cool. Sometimes it's for word marks. For merchandise, this is for New Belgium Beer and their tap house in San Francisco. I am a sober Sally these days, but I would show up and ask for a nice little cranberry juice and support this t-shirt next time I'm in the Bay. My Minnesota accent is going to come out real strong in the Bay. Okay. I've also done some things for beer, don't you know? This is a label for Dominga, which is a lot of fun. I drank this prior to being a sober person, and it's delicious if you find it out there. I don't get paid per sale, but it is genuinely good. The check cashes the same either way, even if it wasn't a good beer, but I did enjoy this one. It's a lot of fun to do work that is expressive and kind of does a lot of things that my old type professors would have told me to never do by doing a reverse contrast, kind of fat bottom girly. Ooh, sorry, did it just get really loud when I said fat bottom girl? Or? Sorry. I'm blushing. It's just bolded? I am a fat bottom girl, not to brag. But sometimes I also do work for illustration. Thank you for letting me joke. Also, there's nothing I hate more than talking about myself. So I'm trying to give you a wide breadth so you don't smell my nervous farts. Often I get to do editorial pieces. This is from Mother Jones magazine. And it's a lot of fun when I get to blend it with illustration. I am a big fan. Come back. I may have pressed the wrong button. My big gay thumb pressed the wrong thing. There it is. Okay. I love mid-century illustration. Often as a queer person, I feel a little left behind by the narratives in those stories. So I'm always trying to use a technical term to fag them up and to make them a bit swishier and gayer. and a bit more inclusive of the people that I like to spend my time around. And a lot of work, if you haven't figured it out by now, I am glow-in-the-dark gay. I used to say you could see my queerness from space, but we've had budget cuts at NASA, so I don't know how true that is anymore. But I'm trying my best. So a lot of times I get to do things for Pride initiatives, which is a lot of fun. This is for Hero Cosmetics, which is great. I love to put their stickers on my zits. Again, not a paid endorsement, just, ooh, so sorry, plant. I'm not even in heels today. Yeah, a lot of my work comes back to the queer experience. This was a series of stickers for Figma. So if you are working on a website or on a group collaborative project and you're like, I want to leave feedback for my peers that doesn't feel straight, we've got that for you. So I don't know, it's a weird time to be alive. My medium is typography. It is my favorite thing. It is the one medium I've worked in that feels like it's a puzzle that can be solved infinite ways. And so I keep finding myself coming back to it in so many different ways. And what is both wonderful about it and sometimes stressful is that type is an inherently declarative medium. So if you're gonna say something, there's kind of this pressure to say something meaningful or funny or bombastic or poignant or something. So this is a slide from a talk I gave at PSU, Put Yourself Into It, which is hopefully something I can leave you all with today. The way that you draw things is so much informed by what you grew up looking at, by the people you drew next to, by the things that you appreciate in culture. And oftentimes we feel a lot of shame around carrying that with us. I'm teaching now at PSU and I have a student who's a reformed anime kid is how they describe themselves. And they're so hard on it. I'm like, look, this is beautiful. I don't draw this way. A lot of your peers don't draw this way, but that's what makes you really unique. You don't have to stay in that space forever, but anyways, keep your stink in it forever. And I'm not just saying that for those within the splash zone of my nervous farts. So much of my design work and my perspective comes from my queer experience. Things from being formed around going out in nightlife in queer spaces. This is a project I did a couple years ago for a brewing company in Canada called Collective Arts. And I was really inspired by those first couple of nights that I went out to queer spaces in Minnesota. Do we have any Midwesterners in here? Yeah, go team. All right. I was at the Gay 90s, is what it's called, in Minneapolis. And they had an 18+ night on Thursdays, and I went with a friend. And I just remember feeling like that scene in Pleasantville where everything goes from black and white to Technicolor. Seeing people that were unapologetically just existing, seeing drag artists, seeing trans people, seeing people of all different body types and expressions, just made it feel like the world had opened up in such a 4-dimensional manner. And I still feel high on that supply, so to speak. So whenever I get to, I love to talk about how fucking fun it is to be queer. Are there any straight people here? Nobody's perfect. You can out. I love you too. I don't want to see what you do out in the streets like that. Keep that shit in your own house, but just kidding. I have straight friends too. I can make this joke. But yeah, I just love to talk about how fun it is to be queer and to meet people through this. It feels like such a fast forward in friendship when you meet somebody that has experienced life in a similar way. And I feel so grateful that however it happened, I ended up my mother's gayest child. Although who knows, my younger brother, he could be a little swishy. We don't know yet for sure. I would love to not be alone. Anyways, all this to say, I am queer all year. We love to celebrate Pride, and I know the phrase now more than ever is exhausting and prescient and depressing, but it's true now more than ever. I feel the urge to not shrink down and to be as gay as humanly possible all year long. So not there yet. Next time I'll come here in a holographic sort of LED situation. Don't threaten me with a good time. So yeah, it's most of my personal work that unabashedly focuses on my identity and on understanding myself. When I took a type design focused program at the Type of Cooper Institution at Cooper Type, even all of my homework assignments of like work with a brush pen, I was like, how can I make this obnoxiously gay? And so I described myself, of course, as a shady queen. But being queer in the world maybe now especially can feel like a really lonely experience. You can wander out into the world, you can witness pop culture and advertisements that feel like they're kind of speaking to everybody but you. And I'm not saying that advertising is the only means of validation, but it can feel really, really lonely. It can be really isolating. And I don't know if you know this, but as of 2021, it is strictly forbidden to be cisgendered and heterosexual in Portland, Oregon. So very excited to do that. I'm just kidding. In case anybody is recording this and sending it to Fox News, I want you to know this is all a joke. I did tell this to friends that I met in Utah at a lettering conference last year. When I said goodbye to them, they're like, I'd love to come visit you, but I'm straight. And I was like, no, 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 it's a joke. But we will try, we will. We're just always recruiting. Just kidding again. I would love to come up here and say that I feel super fiercely confident, excited, and optimistic about the world, but I simply do not. And I think to pretend otherwise would be a disservice to you and to myself. And I hope we don't waddle in this forever, but this to me feels like the elephant that shows up in every room. I see her all the time. I'm really scared right now. There's a lot of things to be afraid of. In 2024 alone, 530 anti-LGBTQ bills were introduced in the States and 77 became law, which is not great. I don't love that. In 2025, so far, over 850 anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced. So far, it's only November. Who knows? Things can only get weirder. So it is a stressful time to be a queer person. And to be honest, my signature dance move is the existential crisis. It goes with every song. I can do it in every pair of shoes. It works for everything. And maybe I'm just reverting to my old dance moves here. But I also think ultimately right now, my body no longer naturally produces optimism. I don't know how to do it. If you have stronger medication than I'm on, please slide into my DMs and say, this one kombucha can do it. I don't know, I'm open to ideas. But it's a hard time to look forward to things. I feel a bit deflated and at a loss. This is a prop from a drag show. My partner did a number as Miss Trunchbull, and this was Sally, I think, who he flings around by the braids. But I saw her laying on the ground at the end of the show and was like, girl, I feel you, I really do. This is a thing that a very drunk twink told me at a gay bar recently. And for some reason, it's just stupid and poignant enough that it keeps ricocheting in my brain. The world is a mirror and I reflect back what it shows to me. And I'm pretty sure he was talking about like being frustrated at the bartender for not serving him a drink faster, but I was like, that means something different to me. So I find myself always drawing from and drawing about the world around me, and especially since quarantine, not to brag, I think that messed up my brain pretty substantially and I'm still recovering. Turns out when science tells you that other humans are scary, it's very hard to unlearn that. So I'm still a little bit there, but I found myself in quarantine returning to traditional media in a lot of ways. I had worked in illustration studios and ad agencies in Chicago where I lived previously, and the bulk of our work was digital, was for shiny clients and really exciting things. And after a certain point, it just felt a little hollow, so I found myself drawing the things around me, most notably my beloved dog, Sophia. She's a rescue from a litter named after the Golden Girls, and I was just like, this is perfect. So she's lovely. She sleeps in the small of my back every night. And I found myself really returning to traditional medias. Drawing has always been a thing I did. I went to school for music and French initially, but I was always distracting myself with, now I can say like cheeses and wine names in a really obnoxious way, but it's otherwise pretty useless. But I found myself always drawing in the margins, even when in those classes. And so, as a lot of us did, I think in quarantine, I found myself trying to return to old ways of communicating visually. And my first summer in Portland in 2021, we had access to a garden for the first time, and more than just like the back staircase of our apartment in Chicago, where I very aggressively grew zucchinis. That's about the only thing that I could hold back there, but they did really well. So this was the first time that we had a little bit more space, and I had not unpacked all of my drawing supplies yet. I only had my black and white markers and this obnoxious hot fuchsia tube that was about half empty. So I decided to just work with those. And we had a blueberry plant, which I'm obsessed with. It didn't occur to me that they came from trees. They do. They're lovely. This one tastes like tangerines. So it became this kind of centering process where I was far away from everything I knew in the Midwest and in Chicago, and I found myself drawing perspectives from my backyard. So this is where I sit while I hang out with my dog, as there are so many beautiful skies in Portland. People had really prepared me for the weather to be really depressing. And in the winter, it is, no lie. But I do love how there's like 5 or 6 different skies in Oregon sometimes, depending on how moody the day is. And I just find myself, I keep accidentally, even now, meeting neighbors by going, oh, wow, into a bush of flowers, and they turn around from behind it. And I feel like a Pollyanna, like cartoon character, but it really is earnest, and I feel blown away by everything out here. There's so many new plants and things to draw, and as I mentioned, I am obsessed with the figs. This is so cool to me. These are all figs that I foraged from neighborhood trees. There's so many people that have protest signs that say, God hates figs. I don't understand that. I love them. It's just weird. I think they're great. I've also learned that they're inverted flowers, which is very cool, and it's kind of how I see myself, because I am a nervous Nelly. I am myself an inverted flower. And I just love this like ridiculous bounty. People in my neighborhood are like really annoyed by their fruit trees. Like to them, it's a nuisance. But to me, from Minnesota, we could only grow frostbite. So this is very exciting. This is my fruit map of all of the fruit trees. And this is just kind of in the blocks around me, and they all have photos and little notes. Big yield on this baddie. So I am super obsessed. Someone in my neighborhood is also growing a pomegranate. And there's persimmons and passion fruit and grapes. My rule is that if I can reach it from the sidewalk, it's fair game, bitch. But I've also now been there for a couple of years, so I know a lot of the people who own it, and I've talked to them. I have a neighbor who brings me some of hers that are not sidewalk reachable, because she just hates figs despite having 3 trees of them. It slowly but surely made it into my work. This was from a workshop I gave a couple of years ago at Letrástica, where I had all of these figures, and this one said, here's fig 12. It's not really relevant to what we're talking about. I just thought we could use a snack. So I really, really love figs. This is what I made as a gift from my neighbor who brought me her figs. So I find myself constantly drawing by the things around me. I didn't really know about a lot of the plants that I was surrounded by in the Midwest, and now I am an obnoxious amateur expert on everything in Portland because there's just so many wild gardens that are everywhere. So I am totally obsessed with drawing everything. And it really represents a different life than the one that I had led in Chicago. I'm slowing down a lot more. It's given me space to plant and to root things and make a community in a much more robust way than I ever felt possible in Chicago. So the neighborhood around me also looks really different, and I find myself always drawing from photos and drawing from memory. And I promise this will tie back to like a really poignant, put it on a poster kind of a message. But for now, let's just look at the things I like to draw. So I just find myself really appreciating the things around me. And when I feel overwhelmed by looking at the news, this was a recommendation from my therapist to slow down and pay attention to things that are real and in front of you. And to me, that's also become a thing of the things that are only in front of me in Portland and in the West Coast and in Oregon. And it's been a really beautiful way to process things. This weekend, not this weekend, oh, I wish it was this last weekend. In January for a weekend for my birthday, my partner and I rented a little cabin in Pacific City. And I didn't take any photos of the ocean or of the place we stayed in. I just drew them instead, which sounds really twee and everything, but I just needed a phone break. And I saw this really stupid meme that said, phone a cigarette for eyes. And it just keeps coming back to my head, like what the drunk twink told me. Poignant stuff on the internet, y'all. But I find myself remembering these in a very different way. This was from as we drove in and night had just fallen and there was a 1-lane bridge. Things kind of feel more cinematic. I remember them a little differently because I focused on drawing them rather than taking a photo and chucking it forever into the recesses of my camera roll where there's otherwise nothing but pictures of my obese cat, Eartha. Now that she's officially fat from the vet, we call her Gertha. So here's me and my partner and our dog, Sophia, walking along the beach at Cannon Beach. Probably not Cannon Beach. I probably made that up. This is another beach on the coast. I'm new here. And all of these small things, like seeing the dots of the seals out on the ocean, the signs that said no crabbing are very funny to me. Also the tsunami danger signs, very terrifying. But studying them this way really etches them into my brain in a really beautiful way and gave me something to do when I woke up early at the cabin rather than staring at my phone. And then at the right, I also was in New York the following last summer, and I was early to meet a friend, and this was just a building that was across the street. So it's been a fun way to slow down and document things and kind of find my visual language of a sort. None of this is commercially viable, I hate to tell you. I've gotten one commission for this type of thing other than a couple people doing private commissions, but it's become my favorite body of work. And I feel like after so long trying to find what my voice was, I think I finally did. And I return to this a lot also. All of our work is a self-portrait. Again, this sounds like a thing that a very drunk 21-year-old would tell you at a gay bar at like 2 in the morning. But I return to it all the time because I think of how much my work reflects who I am and where I was at that time when I was making it. Sometimes it's a vision of the future, no matter how fleeting. Sometimes it reflects our past selves coming back up for a minute. And so I come to this of making is an act of hope, of trying to envision the future and a vision that we can see ourselves in. And I really find myself vacillating between these two of what kind of world are we entering. Like Zoran Mamdani winning is an excellent thing, and then I also read the news and I'm like, whoa, this is not looking so good right now. So I'm really ricocheting back and forth between these two. And I think about it a lot lately, especially every time that I enter queer spaces. I have this terrible fatalism that shows up of like, what if this is the last time that this sort of a space is available? I don't know, but it comes into my brain, especially because 50% of gay bars in the US have closed between 2012 and 2021. And I should add an asterisk that this also affects nightlife outside of queer spaces, but so many of these spaces outside of work and home where we meet each other are becoming vanishingly more difficult. And I think especially when they're tied to vulnerable and marginalized populations, they become harder to support, and it's very scary for me. So I very fondly remember this gay 90s space in Minneapolis. If you've never heard Minnesotans flirt with each other in gay speak, it is wild. Like, oh, hey, daddy. It's very funny to me. But that's the song of my people. Our state bird is mayonnaise. These are my folks. And what I loved about all of this is I felt like the mantra unofficially was all are welcome who make others feel welcomed. That's it. That's the whole thesis. That can mean so many things, but you are welcome until you start saying, hey, you are wrong in this way, you don't belong in this way. Then it's time to hit it, queen. Get out of here. And for me, drag has been my favorite medium since I first saw it when I was 18. I was blown away by the talent and the gumption and the audacity and the absurdity and, of course, the rhinestones. I adore it. It's so stupid. It can be so thoughtful. It can be so devastating. And I think this is the person who says it best, our Lord and Savior, Sasha Velour. I almost said Sasha Colby, who, if you know drag, is also fantastic and deserves statues. But Sasha Velour said, drag is the art form of the queer imagination, and I could not have said it better myself. In fact, I have a tattoo based on Sasha Velour, don't tell her. Drag has been a thing that as I was drawing the things around me, much like I do with my neighborhood now, I started by drawing fan art on Tumblr. I'm an old now, this was a thing we did. And Manila Luzon in these earlier seasons, also from Minnesota, and I was very excited. So I showed up to a bar in Chicago where she was doing a meet and greet and gave her this poster, and then she sold it as t-shirts, which is very cool and very surreal. My mom still doesn't really know what graphic design is, but she understood this one, so that's cool. I've also gotten to do it for some other queens like Monique Hart and Adore Delano, as well as Chicago crown jewel Shea Coulee. I love getting to show an ass that says fuckboy in a professional environment, so thank you. I did titles for her music video, which is very cool and very surreal, and Shea Colby is an icon. Shea Colby, everyone's a Colby now, I'm so sorry. But it can be a really interesting process. I just love drag. I love, even though I'm an inside cat, even though I'm a bit of a wallflower, I always kind of sat on the sidelines and wondered, like, what if I did this, you know? So I did. In 2021, I was the obnoxious friend who turned our weekly Zoom meeting into a, like, why don't we dress up and do drag? You know, like, you don't have to put too much into it, like, don't worry about it, but like, I'm gonna do it if you want to. And so my friends largely put on like purple lipstick and bought like a Party City wig, which is amazing, and I'm glad that they did that for me, but I went all out. And so this was my first kind of drag debut, just in the confines of my own home as a big cactus. And it started with a sketch, like all things do. Something about this is familiar to my process as a commercial illustrator and graphic designer. Selling a concept to somebody so that they believe it also felt like a worthwhile endeavor for me to make sure that it felt worthwhile to just sit on the couch and sew a bunch of nonsense, effectively. And so heading into quarantine, when or kind of out of quarantine, when I moved to Portland, I became fixated on this idea of really wanting to do drag. And I ran out of excuses not to be doing the thing that brings me the most joy. So I created a sketchbook that was dedicated primarily to this. And I started filling it with visions of what I wanted to see my future to be like. I'd never really sewn before. I'd only made a t-shirt by tracing a t-shirt. If you're wanting to learn sewing, may I recommend With Wendy on YouTube. She's fabulous. And she also shows you where she fails, which felt really helpful. But that's my entire schooling of sewing. And I started picturing these things and dreaming things up. So in 2023, time is squishy. I think it was 2023. TypeCon, which is a conference about type design, typography, graphic design around lettering, came to Portland. And I really wanted to speak for it, in part because I didn't want to pay for the price of the conference. And if you speak, you get to do it for free. But I was convinced that I would not get chosen. I really admire that previous speakers are overflowing with confidence. Not me, I don't know how to do it. I have no desire in confidence. It doesn't appeal to me in a lot of ways. I love that other people can do it. You should all be confident. For me, no, it doesn't make sense. But I was just like, they will never choose me. And I wanted to give a talk about how drag is a great metaphor for design, because fonts are just drag for letters. And I put in the bottom, I'll do it in drag if you choose me. And then they did, and I had to make this real. So this is my first time as Tomboy officially. A very funny thing to meet people who've written your design textbooks in drag, because you're like, I don't have to worry about looking stupid because I already look like this. So that was my first attempt into sewing. And I'm very grateful for Portland Drag and for welcoming me into all of these spaces. Sometimes there's a lot of really specific themes. This was for a Dario Argento drag show. I've watched basically only Spice World my entire life, so I'm not a big film buff, but I did my best and sewed this, which was a lot of fun. The shoulders are just a cardboard, basically like half donut shape, reinforced by garden dowels, because otherwise it would fall under the vinyl. So similar to my process for client sketches, I started drawing up these concepts. This was for a competition called King Dad, of who could be the biggest dad drag artist. So I made something that was based on typography, and so I used whatever's within reach. We have a fabulous store in Portland called Scrap that just has scrap materials, as it sounds like. So this was a bunch of leftover PVC. So I wrote out Tomboy. And all of this is really imperfect, and that's really a struggle for me as somebody who is a perfectionist. But I'm trying to go with the drag phrase of good from afar, but far from good. That's what we're trying to do. So this is my first button down, and I embrace the failures of not having any idea how to make a collar around the neck. But I like how it all came together in the end, and I wanted to feel kind of like a movie marquee. So when it all comes together, all of the broken sewing needles mostly feel worth it. And I've started to infuse more of my love for graphics and typography. This was one of the first concepts that I sketched in that sketchbook, and it took me a little while to feel like I had the sewing acumen and the space to do it. I really wanted to be a thank you bag because I also feel disposable and grateful to be here, and largely bad for my environment. So I fused it and made it into a giant plastic bag and do it to Katy Perry's Firework of Do You Ever Feel Like a Plastic Bag, but just that lyric for about 2 minutes. And then I throw out some receipts, and then it reveals to a price tag that says $69 to Jessie J's price tag. I have always had a love for textiles, but have never really found an excuse to explore it. And now I find that I'm no longer waiting for somebody to give me permission to explore it. I'm doing it myself. This is a very fun fidget toy when I'm nervous at a drag show to just play with the fringe that says Tomboy. So I made this out of cheap fringe, and the bottom is a thrifted bed sheet. It's also fun to fuse this with illustration and feel like I am a walking sketchbook in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's really fun. And rhinestones really solve a lot of your sewing errors, pro tip. It's been fun as somebody who does not always love the body that I'm born in. I have played with both abstracting the body and trying to look as unhuman as possible, and also more recently trying to embrace naturally what I have and kind of exploring what this looks like as a dial to play with. And it's also a very multimedia process, playing in front of animations I've made. This is also a fun opportunity to do storytelling. I had sewn this one dress that I'm wearing, and then sewed another one for my partner to do Me and My Shadow by Judy Garland. So it's this really unabashed fusion of mediums where sometimes I feel really ham-fisted saying I'm a designer / illustrator / whatever. But in drag, you kind of embrace that you do it all because it's unaffordable to commission other people to do all of this. So I sewed all the looks, I made the background, and it's even been an opportunity to talk about more difficult things. In the end, I run off the stage and my shadow saves me as a way to talk about more dark thoughts of self-harm and how much pressure you put on yourself in drag and other spaces. But back to things that are light. It's fun to be absurd and playful, as I am here, a big giant Christmas cookie and my very confused coworker Devlin in the background. Sometimes it's fun to be larger than life. This is as a big rotary phone, which is a lot of fun. And I didn't think about wearing this to a brunch because I could not fit between the tables, but I tried my best. But mostly my drag comes down to less of male or female, and my kind of process is what if I wasn't a gender but a thing or an idea? So this is me as Sriracha. I do Donna Summer's Hot Stuff. And then mostly it's been a thing of what happens if I take a ridiculous idea too far? What if I did holding out for a hero as a giant euro? And so I did. So this is me as a giant euro with the wrapping around it. And then I reveal that, and then here's my pita dress underneath it. And then of course I had lettuce silk fans. And then that comes off to be my piece of meat and lettuce dress and my partner in the Sriracha dress. So it's going viral on TikTok, which is a very embarrassing thing to say out loud. I like to do a lot of creature drag. It's like, what if society tells us that we're monsters? Why not embrace some of this fabulous oddity and become kind of the freak that people maybe say you are? It's a lot about exploring new techniques. I had about 3 days to make this, and I just learned how to pleat. So I pleated everything. My drag is a cry for help. This is really what this is. Things kind of keep getting more elaborate as I develop new skills, and a friend gave me a serger. So I became a bumblebee for a pride show, and this is my partner as a flower that I pollinated. Kind of looks like a prolapsed anus. But it's really fun, and it's been paying off recently. I was voted number 2 in a poll of our peers of Portland's finest drag artists. Number 1 is my partner, Rybread, who is the red-haired queen up at top left. Yeah, it feels very cool, especially having done this for 2 years to get that kind of recognition. We're there with Poison Waters, who is front center, and she has been doing drag for as long as I've been alive. So this feels very cool to be in that crowd. And unlike the TV refrain, I'm a huge fan of reality TV. Instead of them saying, I didn't come here to make friends, I came here to win, I very much came to make friends. I did not come to win. I came here for the community, and it's been really lovely. So now I get to produce my own shows, supporting the community by hiring them for these gigs, and also doing some really absurd things like Drag Show the Game Show, which was like an improvised game show that we did with some friends. Mostly because I love how much my peers are just absurd and funny and off the cuff backstage, and you don't get to see that when they're performing a Beyonce number. So I figured this would be a fun way to show them improvising, and this was just a reel that we made to promote it online and an excuse to learn a little bit more of After Effects, which I don't know well. If anyone is an expert, I would love to learn more. And it's been a lot of fun to do design work for other shows in town, especially more poignant ones like this one on the right was kind of like a pride faux rave night for underage queer people, and especially with all the legislation that's passed in the last year, having a space that was like welcoming and safe for young queer people felt very meaningful. It teared me up, which was not a good thing for how much makeup I wear, but it was the type of thing I couldn't imagine existing when I was younger, and I was grateful to be a part of it. I also get to do posters for this ridiculous Club Kid electro night party called Hickey Machine, which is a lot of fun. And Nellie, who runs it, says that she wants the posters to look like the type was set on the subwoofers. So they're all kind of intentionally a little bit illegible. It's all of the things that a really sane client would never hire me to do. So it's fun. And then it circles back also because the poster became its own look, and we screen printed that original poster onto fabric. And I had about a day to make a new look and just kind of ran this through a serger and made this into the most absurd quilt I could. So where I get to talk this, we'll take this all is very exciting, including a talk at PSU and getting to do this at Typographics in New York City. If you ever want to feel crazy, do full drag at 1 p.m. in the Lower East Side while walking from your hotel to Cooper Union. I felt very safe, but I felt very, very weird. Did it go away again? Okay. And then I did LetterWest this year in full drag. That's Ken fucking Barber. I'm so sorry, but like, if you're a type nerd, that is like the best lettering artist living, an incredible instructor. And he helped me touch up my makeup, which was very weird. But I'd never met him before, and I've looked up to him since I was in college. And to get to meet him in this way was very wild. Oh, there's the $69 dress. So yeah, very strange. All this to say, the ethos for all of this, I believe firmly, is to keep one glittering heel in the door to expand who can be in this space, who can make work here, to be the Trojan horse, be the strange you wish to see in the world. The process of getting into drag has been a deeply existential mirror. Very unlike design work that exists as a JPEG, this is on my whole person, on my whole body, and it's very confronting. It's really kind of flipped my world on its head, if you will. A friend came in from the bar after smoking a joint and saw me this and was like, no, and walked immediately out because my face is upside down. So when depression and anxiety kick my butt, as they often do, something about escaping into this other thing has been very freeing. And the metaphor I come back to a lot, it's clumsy, but the less I see of myself, the more I feel like myself. And it's been really, really fun. It's almost as if I'm a bit of a scratch-off lottery ticket revealing what was already underneath there the whole time. If only that were that easy. Why did I decide to do elaborate makeup as my whole thing? I don't know. I'm driving back to Portland to get into makeup as soon as I'm done with this, so wish me luck. Creating this alter ego is something that I wish everybody had access to. I don't have to be afraid of appearing silly. It's a great way to connect with people. It's kind of like exchanging friendship bracelets, except for you paint those on your face. And it goes against a lifetime of compartmentalizing myself, of squirreling away the parts that we fear can attract negative attention. And I feel like all of us as creatives really struggle with this, but maybe especially queerdos, neurodivergent people, eccentrics, oddballs, all of us in this room have learned to sequester parts of ourselves. And I found this tweet very poignant. Queer people don't grow up as ourselves. We grow up playing a version of ourselves that sacrifices authenticity to minimize humiliation and prejudice. The massive task of our adult lives is to unpick which of ourselves are truly us and which parts we've created to protect us. So I think about that all the time. I also think about a thing that a host said at a drag show when I first moved to Portland. When you came out, did you know you could take your whole self with you? And I think that this extends to people who are not just queer. I know I'm talking about queerness because that is the world from which I come from, but I think this applies more broadly and invites you to question what things have you assigned to yourself, what things have been assigned to you, and what can you unpack and renegotiate. As someone who's always been a sketcher, I've really taken this into the world. This is again from Type at Cooper, and even my practice words were about as gay as I could imagine. They could probably be gayer in hindsight. My motto in life is it could always be gayer. But it's been a lot of fun to take this and kind of start dressing up letters and think about lettering in a very different way. It kind of got me out of this creative block that I had been stuck in for quite some time. I'm always sketching future ideas. I've found that ideating something and executing something can be very different muscles. So I have an archive on Notion of a bunch of wild and weird faces that I pull from when I don't know what to paint. So that way I can just focus my brain in one place. This positive and negative space carries through in much of my work, with my visual language as well. Even the way I'm presenting today is kind of accidentally in this black, white, and pink. Most of my wardrobe now is black, white, and pink because I get overwhelmed by too many choices. So we're often taught to think in these binaries in our cultures. It's either this or that, all or nothing, the best or the worst. And I think the more that I acknowledge this third option, this otherness, this non-binariness, the more I feel at ease in myself and comfortable with queerness. Ultimately, I think of it as queering as a verb, which is something I hope you can all think about after this space. How do I queer my wardrobe? How do I queer this space? How do I queer my work? I think we're doing it together, folks. Queerness can be this form of othering and trying to un-other and find people who have been similarly left to the sidelines with shared experiences. And so I find myself really lost in a lot of research lately looking at vintage queer materials. LavenderZines.com is an amazing resource that scans in vintage queer magazines. And I love these because it reminds me of when people survived in much more difficult circumstances than we find ourselves now. Not to underplay the stress that we are under currently, but having any of these materials could have had somebody arrested, could have had them lose their job. And so thinking about these existing as really punk, really kind of life or death material of how to get into drag, how to find trans resources is really incredible. It's a feeling of not being alone. I love this too. It's just for a hotline to call other gay people and talk to them, like, are you out there? And I love that. That's all I'm trying to do with drag. So it's really a privilege to get to speak about this openly, and it's not lost on me that so much of queer communication existed in the shadows all along. Does anyone know what the hanky code is? Yeah, Google it if you don't. It's not too crazy, but when it was impossible to find each other or illegal to do so in public spaces, people would wear different colored hankies and different colored pockets to signal what type of thing they were into. Often it's a sexual sort of a thing, but it can be non-sexual. I think there's one that's like, I just like teddy bears. Like, I've looked into it, it's not a sexual thing. It's just like, I really like teddy bears, so I love that. And we've come a long way since the origins of Pride, which was a revolt against police brutality targeting queer safe havens. And that revolt was led by Black and brown trans people primarily in New York City. It feels very different to contemporary Pride landscapes that can feel very dark. So yeah, corporate Pride work is very complicated. And I say this all as somebody who does it. I'm very much throwing rhinestones from within a glass house. But when you talk about this, rainbow capitalism is a term used to describe the commercialization and commodification of LGBTQI movements, most notably Pride. When you get booked for these gigs, often the prompt is like, show us what Pride looks like to you. And you send them your sketches and you get it back and it's like, oh, no, not like that. Which is fine, that's how client work gets, but it ends up kind of diluting the message as we do this. Of course, when a message centers a corporation, if they're gonna put all this money into making something, they're probably gonna wanna slap their logo on it, and I understand. But the process of doing it really dilutes the message and leaves us wondering, like, who the hell wanted any of this? I do think my dog is a lesbian, not to brag. But generally, I'm wondering, like, what person is like, oh, I have to give my dog these like straight ass biscuits. Like, it's so embarrassing. So I don't really know what we're doing here. It feels also strange to be asked to speak on behalf of an entire corporation. We have no access to their inner workings. We have no access to how they treat people all up and down the lines of production. Are we just making rainbow-colored landfill waste? This is an illustration I made that's like how it feels to do Pride work, if it just feels good to be seen. So Pride lines at stores are really the bare minimum. To slap a rainbow on it, queer folks will buy it, and the truth is we do. But what we need is more gender-expansive clothing. We need more gender-expansive bathrooms and changing room protections. We don't want rainbow tchotchkes. We want protections, equity, and ongoing support. Please, for the love of God, all year round. And I think what's ultimately really tricky about doing queer work is that it's impossible to speak for an entire demographic, especially one like the queer community that has so few common demographics inside of it. I love that even the symbol of a rainbow is not terribly uniform. It's used in different ways all the time with different color palettes around it. Even the pride flag is something that keeps changing, and I think this is beautiful. I'm not one of those people. My mom calls them proteins instead of pronouns, and I think that's adorable. But I'm not one of those people that's like, kids these days, they keep changing ways of how to see themselves. I think that's fucking beautiful, and I think speaks to the complexity of the human experience and how we can reinvestigate and change how we see ourselves in the world. But even this pride flag keeps changing and becoming more expansive, and I love it. And I'm sure it's annoying to go buy new flags all the time, but like, let's do it for the team this time. No matter how hard you try to define queer people or give us boundaries, we seem to be constantly finding new ways to break out of those bounds and be like, nah, I'm also this, which I think is a lot of fun. Sometimes people call the LGBTQIA crowd alphabet soup, which I love a lot. We're comforting like that. You can spell different things. But I think there's this core tension, right? Capitalism condenses us into boxes that are easy to sell to, and queerness expands. And so they will always be at a certain conflict with each other. So I'm always wondering, how can we help to protect each other? How can we do something that is post-capitalism, that is not so fucking exploitative and depressing to be a part of, but still allows for authenticity? Some projects allow this. I got to work with Penguin Random House and making billboards and zines about some books that had been banned recently in 2021. Remember when that felt like the craziest thing that could happen? To go back to 2021. We were so naive. But it feels really nice to do something that brought attention to queer authors and also to the political stresses that they were under. Sometimes I get very strange briefs. Get it? This was to make very queer underwear for Saks. Oh, I thought I pressed the thing. Okay. So it was a lot of fun, like the disco fruit. But it is a very weird thing because the community is largely straight men, and they have a lot of messaging around like testicles in their advertising. So how you can go about doing something that's very queer for an audience that is very afraid of that is a weird constraint within all of it. Ultimately, though, we got to give back to Sage, which is an organization looking after queer elders, and they did this fabulous photo shoot. So like things do exist that are wonderful out of it, but it can be very complicated as you get there. It just feels like trying to shoehorn the queer experience into something that feels safe for the straights. It's just not something that appeals to me that much anymore. No offense to any straights in the audience. And it especially feels just like really gross when the brands don't have our back in any meaningful way, as we saw with Bud Light and plenty of other brands, like Beer for All, unless if it hurts the bottom line. And it feels really gross. About 80% of my work in 2016 was for Pride. It steadily decreased this last year. I think I had no projects that were related to Pride, and that is complicated in a lot of different ways. Maybe I've already touched a lot of the shiny brands, but it is a little piece of data that I have about how this is not spending that's happening as much anymore. And sometimes it's happening with record speed. Like this feels pretty innocuous to me to have a rainbow colored flag behind MLB. And they changed it within hours because of fight back on Twitter. So just a little reminder that to be queer is to have one's existence, validity, and dignity up for regular public debate all the time. It's so fun. We love it. And I think a lot about what this means for young, trans, queer, gender nonconforming youth to witness this. What does it mean for people to walk into a Target with an AK-47 on their back because they're terrified of seeing a shirt with a rainbow on it? Like, what does that mean when we have people that talk about the youth and what it means for them to see queer people? I also think about what this means to see people that are hostile towards queerness and individual expression. I don't know, just things that I do to depress myself. So we're in this weird place where clumsy rainbow capitalism makes us uncomfortable, but it feels preferable to the capitalism that caves to fascism. And ultimately, the actions speak louder than the words or the tchotchkes, because a lot of these companies end up giving to anti-LGBTQIA+ bills. The truth is, what was underneath the Scooby-Doo mask all along was capitalism. We were never really being seen, we were just being sold to. We were only valid as long as we could add value to somebody else's portfolio, and that's depressing. And so here's my optimistic thought. Unfortunately, graphic design just gets capitalism dressed every morning. And this is something we have to think about when we are just dealing with capital and corporate needs around us. It's a weird tension. And I struggle with it because queerness and capitalism will always be at odds with each other. And so that's why I view making as an act of resistance. Whereas capitalism asks us to be a simple little demographic to sell to, I say no, I want to be illegible. I want to make the bartender freak out about where my eyes are. I want to be more complicated and less easily digested. Even in drag, I'm not easy to understand. I'm non-binary. I'm neither king nor queen. I'm more club kid. So I just come back to this, like, what is the opposite of corporatism and exploitation? I think it's people over profit. If we're not materially improving the lives of people around us, is it all just an ego trip? And I'm not condemning any of us for participating in this. This is just like a big nebulous thought that I have with no solutions. But drag and queer spaces are wildly intersectional across lines of gender, socioeconomic background, sexuality, age, experience. Robust circles of mutual aid exist to help when people are down, to pool resources, to share sewing materials and techniques. And I love that, and I feel like we could all learn a lot from that. And also, there's no place to get training for being a homosexual, because Lord knows I would have a PhD if you could. It's about your humanity, your artistry, your artistry, your personal lived experience. And it cuts against how design can feel sometimes, of being in a tower, feeling like we are in similar income brackets. And I think being in drag spaces with people who come from so many different backgrounds has really shattered a lot of this for me. And if I can leave you with anything, it is the urge to get outside of just design for design. As fabulous as a space like this is, there's so much of the human experience that is not entirely captured by this space, and that could benefit from all of your humanity as well. Prioritize the real people around you, not the algorithm, not venture capital. Still mad about what they did to Joanne's. Ugh. Otherwise, what the fuck is any of this for? That's kind of what I'm asking. So practice radical transparency. Show what you can. Know that if you show all of your skills to the person next to you, they're not going to steal your work. They're going to take that and do something entirely different from what you did with it. Don't pull up the ladder behind you, please. Get outside of your bubbles, get into your community. These are my drag friends, and I feel so lucky to be a part of this. We're a whole bunch of weirdos. We are what Fox News is terrified of, and thank God for that. Leave a space more inclusive than you found it. And finally, I love this quote from Micah Bazant: "No pride for some of us without liberation for all of us." Thank you so much.